we go. All right, this is Open Canvas Working Group meeting number 20. So yeah, we can jump in. Michael, did you have anything in terms of an agenda? A couple things. Orion helped me kind of get the spec stuff set up, and then I noticed that we've got some SSL issues. I know what the SSL issues are, and I can fix them, so I'll fix them after this. But in terms of other like status updates, Michael, I'd love to like yield the floor to you first, since you have to go in half an hour. If you wanted to talk about anything you've been working on or show a demo or whatever, now would be a good time. But no pressure
Yeah,
there.
I was thinking if I could show something only that I can import the Hello World file, but I was just looking for it at my computer, but I have to update on this computer. It's on my other laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Just one moment, but that's not
Sure
that
thing.
exciting.
All demos are exciting to varying degrees. Well, while you're working on getting that set up, Max, Aaron, Orion, do you guys have anything you want to talk about today in particular that I could throw on like an agenda?
Yes, there is something I want to talk about. It's with the way position works in OCIF.
Great. Sounds good. I am let me share this while we wait for Michael to get set up.
I thought we could go over our project in GitHub and do some clearing, but Aaron's topic sounds more relevant.
Yeah, we could jump into the position topic and then review the GitHub project. Agreed. There's some stuff to do there. And then, yeah. How about you, Orion? Anything to throw in, or are you just hanging out?
Not much top of mind. I think it could be good at this stage to chat a bit about like which teams and projects to start some discussion with next.
Mhm.
Kind of bring some of those people back into the loop. Because I feel like that's one of the big next important things is adoption.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of under, there's a little bit about that on the GitHub project, and we can kind of talk about it under there. Rubric of some planning and what can we get done there. Michael, you ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, stop and sharing. Screen is
Alright.
yours.
Is my screen?
I hit allow. I don't know if that did anything. You may have to re-invoke it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
There we go.
What I can do if Zoom is not in the way is import the Hello World OCIF file. And just noticed a bug on Windows. On Mac it works, so I have to dive into that. But this is the
I guess that's supposed to be a German flag.
yeah, exactly. It's a Unicode issue probably. It works on my Mac, not on my Windows laptop apparently. This is the
Can you talk about where you got that OCIF Hello World file from?
Yeah, I got it from our GitHub, from the spec. I just copy and pasted it into a file and imported it. And what my tool does, it adds some data, but I want to be able to have this as minimal as possible. So I have to do some work there still, because there's some data like this from my own tool, which I don't want to be there when I do a default import. Also, things like this I don't want to be there. So just as clean as possible. But that's work on my side. That's has nothing to do with the spec.
That's
also doesn't hurt at all. I mean, that's exactly as the spec was intended. You can put your extra data there. It's just fine.
Yeah, that's true. But in this case, these nodes have no behavior attached. So I want my tool to know already some core node types from OCF, like like an arrow and an oval and a rectangle, that I can just import this without my tool needing to add data. At least I thought that might be a good idea to implement it like that.
Mhm.
And once I will, when you are going to attach behavior to this node or change the color or size or do
Yeah,
other
so
stuff.
Aaron and Orion, the Hello World example is literally the first example is if you hit the spec.md and you start scrolling down, it's the first, example that shows what OCF looks like. And so this is the piece of it. It's good to know that actually successfully imports, since Max and I were just winging it, writing out that example.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I changed anything there. Maybe I did, but
Yep.
it's some weeks ago already.
Gotcha.
But
Cool.
not much.
Yeah,
Alright.
Michael found actually a few bugs in the initial example, which I then had to fix. So thanks, Michael.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. Working code is so helpful.
Exactly.
Working code worth more than the spec, for sure.
Absolutely, and this means that we could actually have multiple implementations going here in like a short time, because I think my plate is like pretty clear in terms of like stuff I have to do, so I could probably resume working on the Godot implementation of this, and we could have like stuff moving between Michael's app and my app, and that would be so cool.
Yeah,
That'd be
exactly.
great.
That would be very cool.
Oh man, I can't wait. That's exciting. Well, to that point, unless Michael, you had I'll ask you the same question that I always ask you, which is like, what was challenging, annoying, frustrating about working on this? If there's not anything if you have new stuff, happy to hear it. But
Yeah, but the way the connection works, it's a little bit different than in my own tool. In my own tool, I only have one node that represents the arrow. Yeah, I call it connection, but and here you have a visual node and a relation. So I had to do some work there.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to handle the OCF format as natively as possible. I think that makes it easier. I currently have my own format that's leading, but I store the full OCF file in memory as well. And this is stored in the IndexedDB storage from the browser. But that way you don't lose information. When you want to export again to OCF, then you don't lose any information that your tool does not support. And if you implement it natively, then of course you can handle and store everything that's in there. That's
yeah, that's interesting.
So are you at export time merging the in-memory copy which you read first and your own data model to fuse it?
Yeah. I store, maybe I can show it a little bit, how that works. I have the OCF data here.
So is it per object, per node, or
Yeah,
completely?
the idea was that you can have multiple flows in memory. I don't implement that yet fully. There are two flows over here, but this GL flow is a different view of different implementation. Just to show quickly what that does.
So this OCF you have there in memory is really like the is the JSON tree as an object already.
Yeah, and this is my own. Let me refresh. This is a storage for my own tool.
So you effectively have each node twice, maybe if
Yeah. Yeah, I hope one day to have only the OCF format and not everything twice. But this was the quickest way for me to implement it currently.
Mhm.
You could also do something in between where you have your own nodes, and for each of them you attach the imported OCF node. So then when you delete your own node, you can easily also delete the now obsolete
Yeah.
OCF node.
Yeah, true. Currently, I when I delete this, I also delete the relation in this OCF part, this OCF tree.
Oh, that's cool. So you handle the
But
relations deletion there.
yeah,
Nice.
but when I don't have this, then if there would be something here that I don't support,
Mhm.
I would still need that need this OCF tree to have that.
Yeah, due to our split in arrow and relation, you're going to have to do some reference resolving anyway. So this
Mhm.
solution is actually good. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, and I'm very curious to how others will solve this, but yeah, this is currently how I do it.
Cool. Well, thanks for the demo, Michael.
Yeah, I will stop sharing.
All right. Aaron, you want to talk about position?
Yeah. Let me screen share.
Great.
Are you kidding me? I need to allow Zoom to.
Yep. See you in a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's a Mac problem.
Oh, goodness. So glad that our software is keeping us safe.
Yeah, checkboxes always keep you safe.
All right, I'm back. I hate how things have to restart to get permission on macOS.
Yeah.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So I worked on a little bit of implementing this, and I ran into a pretty fundamental thing where the spec is not clear on this, and so I can't complete an implementation without this clarified. And
Mhm.
the way I see it, there's two ways to do it, and there's fundamental problems with each one in the current spec. So even no matter how you interpret it, there's big problems. Um, so it's about this property position. So we have a lot of there's a lot of things here that clarifies so many things about this. Like the coordinate system, the pixel, like what part of the node it refers to. So all these points here, they define like how big how long the vector is, like in which direction it points, and where the tip of the vector is, like what part of the node it refers to. But this does not define where the tail of the vector is. So essentially, is this position a global position, or is it a position relative to the parent? Um, and I'm curious what answer y'all will have, but like either way, there's like big fundamental issues.
So the idea was, I think, a global position.
Right. Okay. So here's the problem with the global position. If you have the parent-child relationship, um, if you move the parent node, you expect to move like all child nodes with it. So that would mean that an operation that affects the position of one node is going to affect the position variable of lots and lots of nodes. And that's very strange because if you are treating like the OCF file as a DOM, then you modify like one position variable, you would expect it to only modify that one thing and to not have cascading effects throughout the rest of the document.
Yes and no. So OCF is not an in-memory DOM, it's an exchange format. And to make it easy for other tools to import it, it's more like a vector drawing software. So if you open the OCF file in your software, you move one node, all child nodes move as well. But in your software, just probably this parent node is changed. But once you export it, you will calculate the real positions of everything like you do when you render stuff. And then you put the real positions back into the JSON object and export it. That was at least the idea.
Okay, that's a very fair idea. Like just treat it as like a thing that you calculate on export and you serialize and stuff. But this breaks down when you try and look at more complex scenarios, such as if somebody wants to embed an animation inside the OCF file, then you have to account for how these values change and affect each other.
We haven't thought about animations at all and probably are not aware of specific issues related to animation.
Yeah, we've almost always thought of or referred to like OCF files as sort of static assets. Not that the author of the file can't change the contents of them, but they're not dynamic in the sense that like things are actively moving. At least not under the power of the OCF spec in any way, shape, or form. Like it would have to be the application that has implemented OCF is sort of playing forward those animations and that kind of stuff. And to the conversation we had a few minutes ago between Max and Michael, our assumption is that in like external implementers of OCF will have their own internal file format or data representation, data structures that they'll use that'll be separate from OCF. And then we'll perform some sort of merge, render and merge at export time. But maybe that assumption's wrong. Maybe we should assume that people are actually going to want to use OCF as a structured data format for their actual data, in which case some of these things become really a lot more relevant, like you're pointing out, Aaron.
So what you say there is 100% correct in my case, because when I import an OCF document into Godot, the final result will be a Godot scene made of Godot nodes in Godot's native format, and the user won't like know, like they won't have a thing that gets saved to version control as the imported thing, but like behind the scenes, that's what the code will be doing. Um, but that's like uh it's not enough because if I want to take an animation from like an OCF file and we can't figure out how we can define how an animation can move a position without messing up the whole document by like ripping parents away from their children or something like that, and I try and import that animation into Godot, then it's a big headache, you know?
Well, maybe we should separate the topics of animation and relative positioning. So maybe we first look at relative positioning and then move on to animations, because we haven't done anything related to animations, but we have something for relative positioning.
Yeah. So when I bring up animations, I'm giving like an example use case of like where a relative position would be like superior.
Well, currently we have relative positions as an extension, where you can say, I have a parent node in OCF with a global position. I've got a child node in OCF with a global position. But then you say, no, it's not parent child. It's even that's a built-in, but this one has no relative positioning. We have the relative node extension in the spec, in the extensions. But open the extensions MD to
Ah,
uh, I don't know who's sharing, but please share the
I
extensions MD
I
file.
am sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, and there we have the relative node,
Aha.
relative node, and that's the one that can additionally to the two absolute positions say, hey, actually, this child position is not coming out from somewhere. It can be calculated by taking the parent position, applying this relative offset, and then you will get the child position. If you're a smart software, you can rerun these calculations and store these offsets here. If not, we have calculated in the export the global positions for you. You can just display it. So that was the idea here.
Okay. The existence of this like field does like solve the fundamental problem. Like if I were to use this, then I can do everything relative to this. And I can ensure that every file has these relative positions in it on export, and import I'll have to calculate it. Um, but I guess my main argument here is that this should be like in the core spec. I think in my opinion, that would be similar to like how GLTF does it, and even Godot's own scene format when it saves things, it's always saving like parent relative, and this works better for animations. And with the global position, it would just end up I would have to save two position properties in every node in essence. Um,
Yeah, by intention, so that other tools that are too dumb to apply relative positioning can still just look up the position that's there, the global one. But it's
Mhm.
only written at export time. So
Okay, so the question then is, what uh what software are we trying to target that calculating a global position will be a complex task? Because I feel like this can be done like not too hard, you know?
this is the fine line about core and extension that we walked all the time, and on many occasions we made things simpler. So right now, very, very simple JavaScript can just read an OK file, understand barely anything, but just put all the visual nodes at their position, and you see something correctly. You don't have to do any calculation whatsoever. Currently, it's
Yeah.
very easy to tinker with the format, and I think that's a good property.
I think the other
Okay.
some specific pieces of software, Aaron, since you asked that question, that we're looking at targeting at least early on would be things like Obsidian's canvas, which is an extremely primitive canvas, and then TL Draw and Excalidraw are two of the other sort of targets, kind of on the more graphic designy feeling. It would be things like FigJam, Miro, you know, things that have more of a feeling like I'm drawing as opposed to kind of prototypey or sketchy feels that TL Draw, Excalidraw have. Whereas Obsidian tends to be more of like an information organization tool, similar to yeah, it's a couple other canvases in that general category that are mostly about laying out text and like almost like putting note cards on a canvas. So in those cases, they often don't have any parent-child relationships. It's more about yeah, just their absolute position on the canvas. Um,
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense if it's going to be the common case that uh a lot of apps using this format will use only just like a flat hierarchy of no parent-child relationships at all. And so
yeah,
then all positions are both like the relative position and the global position would be like the same numbers.
right.
And this would only the relative position would only be relevant for a small number of cases.
And we could end up being wrong about that, right? And so it's possible that this becomes core later. Um, we worked hard to make extensions between core and like non-core feel very similar. So there's really not a lot of, if you implement both and like kind of play around with them, I don't think there's any real difference, Max. I'm trying to think. Other than
No,
we
yeah,
can
it's
assume that the core extensions are available, like implementers of the spec need to provide support for the core extensions, and they don't need to provide support for the extensions like non-core. Is that a correctly stated, Max?
yeah, exactly. We have this schema section where you have these pairs of short type and long URI fields. That's what you do to establish the local name. And for the built-in core things, we say they are like auto-added. And for the extensions, you need these extra name URI pairs in your file.
Mhm.
But that's about it. And we said whenever we have a new version of the spec, we will have at the same time maybe new versions of the core extensions, and the the extensions they can version on their own. So maybe they change even less or are even easier to use in the end. We will see. But technically, both are extensions on nodes and relations. That's you have your own property bag, and with a type, you say which property bag you have.
And a related concept that we bundle in is that's in core is the group relation. And a lot of whiteboards type software, TLDraw, ScalaDraw, Muros, Obsidian, they provide a concept of like grouping nodes together, but it's not really a parent-child relationship. You're basically just saying when you drag one of these, you should be able to drag all of them. And we represent that using a group relation. And so it's still an absolute position for all of those for all of those rather than relative positioning them relative to one another. And that was another argument for us to move relative position out of core, is that we're providing that group relation to capture that very common use case that without providing relative positioning, without using relative positioning to provide it. So.
Okay.
But again, when you actually get to implementing this, we would be very curious to hear your feedback and if it makes sense to kind of adjust the spec in response to what the actual implementation of it feels like. We're happy to do so.
Okay. Well, I don't even need to implement it all the way to just know that what I would like is for I know this is meant for like infinite canvases like Obsidian and such. Um, to avoid like duplication of effort like throughout the industry, I would like for this to be also a like general purpose UI layout format. At least that's how I'd like to use it in Godot because that's what its control nodes are. Um, so like you could take any GUI you make in Godot and like export it as and it basically turns into like a thing that you can import into Obsidian and you have like the whole UI with like all the
Yeah.
images and stuff and then text and you can like click on it and like move pieces around. So and that could be like a really useful thing if you wanted to like take something from an app and export it into like I don't know Figma or something like that where it's like a designer tool and you could just like poke at each individual piece.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
fun idea.
yeah. So also one thing I should mention is if I'm building an exporter for this as is with the spec, one thing I could do is I could make it so that I mentioned that like the relative position is really important and I would always include it. Actually, I would always include it on everything that's not like a top level node, you know? Like if it is a flat hierarchy, I could probably just exclude it altogether. But like if there was an animation extension in the future, that we would have to put something in there like you need to include the relative node extension for animations if your thing is not a top level thing or it's not going to work properly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, I'd love to see how you would define an animation extension for this too at some point. That should be a really interesting non-core extension for certain applications to be able to provide animations. So
So let me show you something called the GLTF asset object model specification.
okay.
Um, so when GLTF was first released, they only defined a few things that could be animated, like position and rotation and such. But then they later added on this object model, and I think it would just be a smarter move for OCIF to start with the object model as like the only way to refer to properties. So what this allows you to do is you have these what's called JSON pointers that refer to something in the document, like slash cameras slash zero slash something, you know,
What?
like you're referring, you're base. Oh, raised hand.
No, Michael had just had to leave.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
they were waiting to.
okay, yeah. Um, so you refer to these things by JSON pointers. So you basically just treat the JSON like a DOM, and you dig into every single property that you want to animate, and you just refer to it this way. Now, it doesn't mean that you treat it as a DOM like in the final version. What I would do is I would take these JSON pointers and have like a mapping that says, okay, if this property on this node is being animated, I'm going to map that to this node that I generate in the imported version and this property on that node, and then I animate that instead of the JSON pointer.
Are the double curly braces a placeholder for object?
It's yeah, so cameras is like an array, so it's saying like in cameras there is it's like an array of objects, so some object in there. So if you were actually
Mhm.
writing a valid file, you write like cameras slash 0 slash whatever. Um, yeah. And there's a lot of these that are defined. Um, and also that has to define like data types like floats, float2, int,
Mhm.
float3, but this is just a standardized way to refer to things, and the object model itself they have put in the core specification as just like a standardized way to refer to things, and then it's up to other extensions to actually use that. But then there is a ratified extension called animation pointer that they have. It lets you animate things by path. So let me see. Yeah, it's just an example. So you have this animation. When animation's like a built-in thing inside of GLTF. It doesn't need to be an OCF, but then you have um, a pointer to this. So like I guess my thing for OCF would be like um, if we make an animation extension, like this stuff would be inside of some extension somewhere, and then this wouldn't exist because pointer would just be like a part of the regular animation.
So when you're saying the difference between the object model way of specifying an object and our current node in OCIF is the ability to sort of reference the different children using this pathing thing. Like I'm trying to like do a diff between object model and our nodes. What's missing?
So object model is just a way to refer to things with JSON pointers, and that is like a very formal way to define this. So
Mhm.
um, we don't need to restructure anything inside of OCIF to make this work. We just need to say
Right.
like, hey, this is a thing you can do with JSON
Yeah, because we
pointers.
already have nodes already have IDs, so you could have a pointer that says slash node slash ID, node ID. Um, and
Yeah,
then the slash, I guess the next slash is like properties that exist on that node.
yeah.
I think the one thing where we are not so nice with respect to JSON pointer is if you have multiple extensions and you want to to address the third property bag, but the
Mhm.
fact that it is the third is completely irrelevant. You're talking about the property bag that has the type so and so, and this is just not a maybe not a possible JSON pointer query or just not a nice one. So we would maybe need to introduce some extra syntax, some path syntax, where you can say, I'm taking the node number 17, the property bag for the relative positions, and then the property position.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so like
So this is maybe the missing piece.
it in GLTF every like item in an array like a node is referred to by an index. So that's why we have like
Mhm.
a 0 here. We might want to do something where um you do an index as well in OCIF, which is like fine for serialization but bad for readability. Or we could do node slash some ID. And but if we did an ID here, that would imply to a reader that the structure of the document is a dictionary in that place, an object, in unlike an array like we have right now.
Mhm.
So that's a little bit tricky. Um, in either case, I do want to make a minor petition. Should we disallow um, IDs of nodes from being just straight up numbers, like integers, so that people don't confuse them with indices?
I wouldn't disallow a lot of things. I would say we will not end up using JSON pointer as is anyway, because it doesn't fit to the extension model we have. We need some
Okay.
other path syntax.
All right, so we'll need to define some more more fancy syntax for this then. But
Right.
this is a JSON pointer is a good inspiration, just allowing us to like
Yeah.
slash something
Yeah.
slash something, you know.
I can see how you would use that, especially in the context of an animation where you're saying basically change this property over this time period, along with easing and all the other things that you can define around. Yeah, it feels very much like CSS animations where you can be like animate this property. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. What are some of the other use cases for JSON pointers? It's so obvious in the context of animations, but where do you find them also to be useful in GLTF?
Okay, so from Chronos itself, there's only two extensions they have right now they're using it. One is animation pointer. The other
Hmm.
one is something called KChar interactivity,
Mm.
which is this is a ginormous extension. It was taking a while to load it. Um, so this is essentially an entire scripting system inside of GLTF. Like
Holy smokes.
uh
That's like HyperCard inside GLTF, basically.
yeah, T Turing complete, you know, very flexible visual scripting system with no with like script block nodes that like point to each other and like have like if statements that have like a true and a done it points to some other thing. Um, so it's an entire scripting system. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff here to talk about. Like, okay, here's some of these like script blocks that exist, and here's their inputs and outputs, um, and so this needs to be able to talk to GLTF, of course, so that the calculations you make in the scripting system have some effect. So that it uses JSON pointer to talk to things. To yeah, it's like set
That's
like
really,
maybe some
yeah.
event happens and you want to set the position of a node, you know.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah, this would be a very interesting one for Michael to take a look at with his tool, which has a lot of interactive elements in it. It might be that he can use it that there could be an extension to OCIF that represents some of the interactivity um, in his tool. Super interesting.
yeah. So
Cool.
this the thing is though there's approximately the same like problems we encounter when doing some kind of scripting system versus doing an animation because in a way you could kind of make an animation out of a script if you wanted to.
Yep.
They're
Absolutely.
very similar challenges, so it makes sense that they would be solved in similar ways.
Mhm. It does. Yeah, I can see that. Well, Aaron, good luck. Godot as an export and import uh, for OCIF is going to be pretty cool. I'm excited about that.
All right. So like as a conclusion then,
Yeah.
uh if the decision is that we will keep relative position as an extension
Mhm.
and like encourage the flat hierarchy as the like typical or recommended workflow
Mhm.
the default thing is geared towards, and then if you need like a hierarchy you use that extension,
Mhm.
then we still need to update this to clarify. We just add a bullet
Mhm.
point here, say something like this is a position relative to the root of the document, and if you need
Mhm.
a parent-child relationship with the relative position, then go look at this extension over here, you know.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I totally agree. That would have definitely saved
Yeah.
you some time if you had known to go look at that. And we do explicitly link to the parent-child one without linking to the relative position. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to give more pointers. Also,
Face on pointers. No, kidding. Markdown pointers in this case.
Yeah. What should we recommend? Actually, it's slightly confusing. Should you use the group relation to state that things are nested and the application knows if you move somebody here, it's a relative position usually? Or should you use the relative position, relative node extension, or should you use both? We could give some more guidance on this in the cookbook.
That's
Agreed.
true. My
How to
my
do it.
expect
And
my expectation as somebody just reading this is that if you want the transform of something to always move together, that's what the parent-child relationship is for. And then a
Mm.
group would be like if you sometimes want to move all the nodes together and sometimes want to move them separately.
The way that I think about it and what we've been talking about, Aaron, in the last few meetings is this idea of visual nodes. Nodes represent visual structure on the canvas. Relations represent not synthetic. What am I trying to say? Conceptual
semantic.
structure.
Yeah.
Semantic. That was the word, Max. Thank you. Semantic structure. And so if we followed that line of reasoning, you may want to use the relative node to enforce the visual structure's consistency and also use the group relation to indicate the semantic nature of that kind of group of nodes. Um, so so that same duplication happens in Arrow, which Michael was showing earlier, where there's both a node that represents the visual structure of the arrow on the canvas, and then there's also a relation, an edge relation between those two objects, so that you can. And the thinking hopefully is to be able to extend the support for OCIF into the semantic tooling some into more semantic tooling that often don't even have a global position. They have an auto layout tool, or they have
Or
multiple potential layouts.
or they have no layout. Maybe it's a very textual wiki-like thing, and you can still import it, and you still get some hierarchies right because you know what groups are.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's why we duplicate the stuff into the visual world and the semantic world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
using both is probably right.
I think in the cookbook that would be where I would start exploring first. We should see how it looks in the OCIF file, but I would probably think both. Yeah, especially, but it's also kind of assumes that a canvas supports the relative positioning. Right? Like if you don't really support the relative positioning as a feature in your canvas, just don't think about it. Just use group and global positions and you're good. And then when importing your tool into Godot, Godot may say, oh, this is a group. I think I'm going to use relative positioning for because it's way easier for me. And so it might add that extension, but it also has to on export write out those global positions so that as it goes like round trips back to that piece of software that doesn't support relative positions, it can still do the layout appropriately.
This does make me think, how am I going to represent groups in Godot? Because like
because in Godot you have a scene graph, right? It's not
yeah,
a group in
there's
that.
there's not really any groups natively in Godot at all. I could like turn that into a parent-child relationship, but that doesn't really work well because what if you have a node that is in multiple groups? Like
Exactly.
it's not a hierarchy.
No, it's not. Yeah, parent-child implies that there is a parent, whereas a group is basically saying these set of group nodes are related to one another. It doesn't actually specify that anyone is a parent or has a child-parent relationship to any of the other.
Well, that specific problem is easy to solve. I could just create a new node from thin air and say that is the
True.
parent. But yeah,
Yeah.
the problem of like it not being a strict hierarchy is the main issue because you can with a group there's nothing in the spec as far as I know that says that a node can't be in two groups at once.
No, it can totally be in two groups at once. Yeah.
Although that's probably a rare case, and we could say usually it should not happen.
Yes, I love Max's language of should not.
That that's not precise enough in my opinion. Like
Well, that's the
you're
language of specs, right? Is should and should not.
yeah, but like Chronos for the GLTF they have I don't know where this is, but they have somewhere written in their README that they like extension authors should prefer using must and must not instead of should and should not
Oh,
because it should is just not clear enough.
I see. I see. Must and must not. I can get on board with that. Let's see. Okay. This is like a really helpful discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, I think what I was going to say, Aaron, about the group relation is if Godot doesn't have groups, then you don't have to support that relation in your visualization, in your implementation at all. You just have to preserve it when you export. You can basically ignore it and say like groups don't mean anything in Godot, so I'm not going to get rid of this thing, but I'm also not going to. I'll just make sure that I reapply it when I export.
Which
Okay,
is hard
that's
enough.
yeah. So what that means is that I'll probably have to have some piece of data sitting around in the generated scene. It's like, here are the groups, and the data just does nothing in Godot at all and only exists to like survive the round trip.
Yep. And I think this is the biggest onus that we place upon implementers is that
Yeah, but
they
it's
should
it's
preserve.
it's actually hard, Jess. Let's say we have a group with 5 members, so I import
know.
the group and the members, and then I delete 2 of these members, and then I re-export the group. Should I not maybe also delete these 2 members from the group now?
Yeah.
But if I don't understand the group, then I cannot do that. So these are so at
Yeah,
import time, if you find a group and these members don't exist, silently assume they had been deleted by some other tool and
yeah. And like, what if you know I preserve like the node path of well, a node path in Godot is just like name slash name slash name that refers to like
Mhm.
a node. And what if
Mm.
I save all the node paths of the nodes that are in this group, and then like the user renames one, and then they export, and then I lose the reference to it because you know.
Yeah. No, it's reasonable.
there are tons of these
That
tricky edge cases.
there's I feel like I could do some effort to preserve groups, but like at some level the user has to like know, oh, groups are not like supported in this app, so like it's really sketchy if you're gonna get the right thing on export if you're heavily modifying the data.
Yeah. I think that's the
But I
reality
guess,
for
yeah,
entertainment
that's how it
that.
is.
Yeah, exactly. We're bridging things that were never built to be bridged, but at least we can provide a like narrow bridge between the two that to get
Yeah.
things in between them.
I also want to mention that like this
Mhm.
concept of like preserving data that like is not in your app is a thing that I think is generally like a good idea, but there's not really much precedent in the industry as far as I see, because every GLTF tool, it just like discards any data it doesn't know about. It's like you throw a GLTF with a custom extension into Godot, round trip it, data's gone. Into Blender, round trip it, data's gone. Into GLTF transform, data's gone. Like because it just imports it what it can, and then it forgets the rest of the
Drops
document.
everything else on the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is kind of unfortunate. And even with a simple tool like GLTF transform, I've asked the author of GLTF transform to just add a setting to like copy over the extensions as is if they're not recognized, and they said no. And I said, okay, how about like you let me whitelist an extension and just copy that extension's data over? And he said no. And I'm like, okay, why? And is it because what if an extension refers to like an image and my tool modifies the list of images and then that reference isn't invalid anymore? And my response is, okay, well, what if my extension doesn't reference an image? Can I copy that extension's data anyway? And he said no. So that there, I don't know why, but people in the GLTF world are really, really picky about parsing everything into like some known data structure and then like sending it back out.
I get it. I
Well,
get
as
it.
a last resort, you could take an OCWG file, import it into Godot, edit it, export it back into Godot storage format, and now your importer tries to reconcile what you put in, what came back out. Do we still have some nodes and try to put it back into OCWG? Or consolidate the OCF export and the incoming to preserve more stuff.
That's a good point. So maybe there could be some option for like exporting with an existing file as a base where it like does the export and then like tries to overlay it onto the existing file and merge it somehow.
Yeah, it's a merge. It's a merge operation where it's like update instead of delete kind of thing. Of like try to update the two. It's going to be I think it's going to be a really useful utility to write generally for the ecosystem, and then hopefully authors could use that tool to try to provide that sort of naive merge.
Yeah, generic merge operation.
Exactly. Yep.
Which has like a rule file to know which precedents to take, or
yeah, you could parameterize.
Yeah.
You could parameterize it. You could say like this is the old file, this is the new file. You could say these two files are unrelated, but I just want to merge them. It's like a copy paste operation where I want to take both, so to speak. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff that could be done there. So speaking of stuff that could be done, we have a few minutes left. I'm going to share my screen and bring up the GitHub projects. And I'm just going to capture that idea that we were just talking about. Merge a to generic merge to OCF. Update. Okay. I'll make it as a draft for now. Cool. So if we look at the board, we shipped 0.3 in the last couple weeks. I started serving the spec URLs at speccanvasprotocol.org. I have some fixes to do with the SSL that I'll get to. Yeah, let's see. I guess I'll walk the board backwards. We had talked about normalizing the file names, Max. I think this is probably, I guess we can do that now. But when I was going through the spec serving piece, I was trying to use wildcards to be able to reference these different files, and it turns out that they're not named appropriately. So we can open the PR and name them correct, like rename things so that they're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 0.2 one was the annoying one. We worked on a 0.2 PR, and then on that PR without merging back to main, kind of took 0.2 to 0.2.1. So there's some Git history on a pull request somewhere about what was in 0.2 before we went to 0.2.1, but I don't know if that's that necessary.
It's fine if we will never find it. We just have a 0.2.1, and why not? I mean, who cares?
I don't think it really matters to recover it. I just it's just, it'll be a funny thing one day. Like, why doesn't this building have a 17th floor? Why does it go from 0.1 to 0.2.1? Like,
I mean, look at the JSON schema versions. They are completely weird time points and release candidates.
They're doing like, they went to like from draft 3, draft 4 to like draft 2020 something, you know.
gotcha. All right, so this one is the one for fixing the SSL problems. So yeah, Orion, your specific question was what teams and tools should we engage for adoption? My thinking in terms, the last time we talked about this, I was saying that one of the best ones to target probably early on would be Obsidian Canvas for a lot of reasons. Obsidian Canvas is really minimal feature set here. And then also people in the Obsidian Canvas ecosystem are used to the idea of like a JSON style format of a file that they can pass around and load into an application and that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like ideologically, the Obsidian community is extremely well aligned with Canvas protocol. And so building that format, that converter, two-way converter could be great. And then yeah, that would be my guess. And then from there, I was thinking like TL draw makes an an interesting target because there's an extensive ExcaliDraw plugin for Obsidian, but there's not. I think the TL draw one is either no longer working or kind of out of date or behind or whatever. So there are people who like to use TL draw and like to use Obsidian. And if we just had Obsidian to OCIF and TL draw to OCIF, people like myself who are using TL draw all the time could like export this into Obsidian and then be able to see it using Obsidian Canvas's tool. So
That would be so cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan as the first two targets. I think on the Obsidian side, yeah, targeting the community and the people making extensions. Not trying to go for something first party, but to support like an importer that will take OCIF and chug it into an Obsidian canvas.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Even if that version of it is lossy, which it would be without true first party support.
Right. Right. And that kind of comes back to the idea that we were just talking about of having a generic merge operation. If you had a generic merge operation, when you're doing the export, you could attempt to recover what's in the OCIF file as it was originally, even if it got dropped on the ground by Obsidian when it loaded it into Obsidian Canvas. I'm very curious how well that would work. Max, what are some other stuff that's on your
Yeah, two small things. One is about the Z ordering. We discussed this specific point that we said if we have a rect or oval or whatever, and it's also showing a resource, then the rect and the line of the rect is on top, and the image is behind, so you can use it as a frame. But another common case is you have a rectangle, it has a border, and your resource is text, and you would like the color of the rectangle be in the background. So if we could say the rectangle line is in the foreground, Z index wise, the resource that comes in the middle, and the color of the rectangle is the background color, then we would address the most common case. I think I've wrote this in the spec already, but we should agree on that.
It sounds like that is in the spec. Did you put it up?
I think I made that up on this Z order. Here we should have it.
Z order, the stroke.
Yeah, the fill color should be rendered behind the resource. So that's, yeah, but I made that up on the spot without discussing it with you.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, that's fine then. Then we resolved our issue here.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, good call. Anybody else have any questions about that, Orion or Aaron, before we thumbs up it? We can also change these at Aaron to must and must if that makes you feel better.
I agree with that. I think must and must not is much better language wherever we can use that.
I think me personally, I'm most concerned about like the specifics about like transforms and positions, because I want to make sure that the way that everything's laid out and how they are relative to each other you know, is correct. It will be really weird if like a UI just like exploded in the user's face. But if there's some minor rendering problem where like something is not rendered right, that to me that's a lot more minor than, you know, everything going off every which way. So I'm more comfortable with should in this case, but like in general must is good. So like if you go to switch it to must, then sure.
We can. Another question that came up in my head is, what do we recommend on using the group relation, which is in core, or the parent-child relation, which is in extensions? Because they're similar. The group says, I contain these, and the parent-child says, I'm contained in that one. So the group is more concise often. But when to use what? Should you use both? If you, let's say you inherit from a child, it's a bit redundant and not clear what guidance we should give. No. But maybe it takes longer to discuss that.
Yeah, I'll add it as like a task and
Yeah.
something I can do before the next meeting in 2 weeks is kind of go through this list and see if anything warrants discussion. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. We are a few minutes over our 1 o'clock meeting time ending. Anything needs to go into the task item. I think this board is available too for Aaron and Orion. You should be able to see this. It's public, so feel free to toss tasks in here or move tasks forward as you're working on them if you wish. But all right.
Yay.
As like two closing thoughts, I will mention as somebody who's biased in terms of GLTF and game engines, I will always vote for the relative positioning being the only way to do things or whatever. But the way that this works as an extension works fine, probably. So I think I'll work on implementing this. I don't see any conceptual hurdles now.
Cool.
Other closing thought I want to mention is the stuff about like JSON pointers or some other way to refer to properties. That is, whether that is in the core or not, we should really think about how that's going to work before version 1 of OCIF, because it would be weird if like when we did come up with a way to refer to properties, we had it be like really janky because it doesn't, because the format, is hard to refer to things in.
Yeah, we just
Yeah,
haven't
I
had the
put
need to refer them yet. Go ahead, Max.
I put the first idea in the chat here, and yeah, but this is certainly a discussion item we should tackle in time and think about a pointer way to address individual properties in each node. For scripting and animations, that's clearly needed, and we should standardize it. Otherwise, yeah, that won't work together.
Yeah, we could, that sounds like a really good use case for a discussion item.
Yeah.
And kind of, I'm curious to see if other people have different points of view on it as well. Cool. All right, folks. See y'all in 2 weeks, if not before.
See you all in 2 weeks.